Today's webcast, Your Roadmap to SD-WAN and SASE. I'm Deb Snyder, Senior Fellow for the Center for Digital Government, and I'm excited to serve as your host for today's webcast. Joining us today, we're going to have a great session over the next hour, so thanks for being with us. Before we dive into content, I have just a few brief housekeeping notes to share with you. We've designed this webcast to be interactive. You can participate in our Q&A by submitting your questions using the Q&A widget. Send in your questions as they come up throughout the conversation, and we'll get to as many as possible during the Q&A portion. You can also increase or decrease the size of the media player and the slide windows. We'll email a recording of this presentation to all registrants within 48 hours, so you can use the recording for your reference, or feel free to pass it along to your colleagues using the share widget in the console menu. They'll be sure to appreciate it. At the close of the webcast, we'll encourage you to complete a brief survey about the presentation. We like to hear what you think. If you're unable to stay with us for the entire webcast, but you'd like to complete the survey, just simply click the survey widget at the bottom of your screen and it'll launch the survey for you. Otherwise, it automatically pops right up as soon as the webcast concludes. Currently, we recommend you disable your pop-up blockers, and if you're experiencing any media player issues or you have other technical problems, please visit our webcast help guide simply by clicking on the help button at the bottom of your console. All right, joining us today to discuss this topic, we have James Player, Senior Principal Marketing, SASE, SSE, SD-WAN Product Manager with Windstream. That's a lot of initials, James. Let me tell you a little bit about James before we begin. James is responsible for the entire product management lifecycle and launch orchestration of these strategic solutions. He has 25 years of experience in the telecom industry, having previously been the product manager for the company's SD-WAN solutions, including Fortinet SD-WAN and VMware SD-WAN. Welcome, James. We're glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We also have George Stewart, National Director, Sales Engineer with State, Local, and Education with Windstream. George has 25 years of experience with Windstream in sales, service, engineering, and management. Currently, George is leading a team of Windstream enterprise sales engineers who specialize in designing transformative connectivity, collaboration, and security solutions for higher education, state, and local government. He holds a BS in Business Administration with a concentration in IT security from Liberty University. George, thanks for being with us. We're glad to have you here today.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to start this off with a polling question for our audience, just to get a sense of what your pain points are and be a little bit more selective and tailoring in our conversation. So the question is this: how confident are you with your organization in the fact that you have sufficient enterprise visibility and monitoring in place and can swiftly detect and investigate potential cyber incidents? I want you to select just one option for this question. Are you highly confident we have the necessary processes, tools, and capabilities firmly in place? Are you somewhat confident we're working on efforts to enhance our visibility and capabilities? Maybe not as confident and prepared as we should be, gaps in skills, solutions, and coverage are known, or you're not involved, not sure, or it's unknown to you. All right, George and James, while our audience responds, what have you observed in working with state and local government education and education organizations? Are there enterprise visibility, monitoring, detection, alerting capabilities and whatnot where they should be? And what challenges are they facing?
Sure, I'll take that. And thank you, Deb. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And, you know, we have a great discussion topic. I hope we provide valuable information for the audience and to start with. And, you know, we'll probably touch on it several times throughout the day, but it's truly a never-ending journey. We're never quite where we should be, but we just do the best with where we are. And we need to advance that. And what we're all trying to do is develop and move from being 100% reactive to being more proactive and even predictive in our capabilities. So with that, I wanted to start out by kind of recognizing some of the programs that the states have kind of presented and that we've seen. Knowing that the #1 priority is always cybersecurity. It's been for multiple years. But there are some other initiatives that have been identified and moving into like digital government services, legacy network modernization, migration to cloud services, and network optimization. All of those things kind of play into what we're going to talk about today. And some of the notable programs that we've seen consist of developing technical innovation centers. We've seen states doing that, which is really a brilliant approach to getting this information out. We can kind of learn about the technologies, see the technologies in action, actually work on those in a sandbox or beta environment. And then these innovation centers are even taking it to an extreme where they're providing ongoing training and education. So those programs are out there and they're really good. Developing framework architecture to share with all agencies and organizations within the state. It's a brilliant way to kind of expand that and keep everyone guided on this path. And then we've even seen some information regarding funding programs and how to request funding for modernization programs that is just, it's very innovative. And then across the board, to answer that question on where we should be, I'm seeing a lot of the states, and all the states are working on this, is really building a culture of cybersecurity and making the security awareness available to all the employees. So those are kind of the good things that I'm seeing in this capacity. James, there's still some challenges though. Do you want to touch on those?
Sure. I was just going to mention you are a wealth of knowledge and experience. I love that you're sharing all those different examples that people can take advantage of. Some of the biggest challenges that I'm seeing from a product standpoint and products overall and customers is just the sheer complexity. The modern IT environment is very complex. And I think it's in an organization's best interest to simplify the monitoring, simplify the management, simplify the alerting. And that's what we're going to touch on a little bit today, is how we go about simplifying. Another challenge that state and local governments are often seeing is that they are specifically targeted, and not just targeted by everyday hackers. They are very sophisticated, well-resourced hackers with an objective of definitely doing harm, almost at a nation state level. So these SLG organizations need to plan continuously and review and strengthen their security efforts. So that's where I would start off with the challenges and what to do about them.
Thanks for sharing those insights, George, James. I'm sure our audience could see themselves firmly in some of those real-world situations that you outlined. Let's take a look at where our audience feels that they stand with regard to enterprise visibility and monitoring. It looks like most are somewhat confident. Their efforts are underway. They're strengthening their visibility, capabilities, security posture. Some are in the highly confident range. They've got things pretty well in gear. Maybe some automation or workflow automation might help them a little bit close those gaps. Others not so prepared as they think they should be, and a handful not sure and unsure. And I think that's pretty reasonable. I think that people are starting to get their heads and their capabilities where they need to be, and that there's still a little work to do where we can help in terms of automation and technology to support those objectives. All right, let's get started and jump right into some opening questions. What types of attacks are government organizations currently experiencing? How are they faring, and are they generally prepared to handle them? Let's start with you, James, and then we can get George's view.
I would love to kick that off. We're definitely seeing ransomware attacks. They're the most common, they're most disruptive. These ransomware attacks, they are ransoming not just one thing. The first thing is to unencrypt the data, but we're seeing double, triple, and quadruple extortion ransoms. The second one is to not leak the data to the public. And the third one is not to get attacked again. And even a fourth one is to not go after their customers or clients, which is the data that they have access to. So ransomware attacks is definitely the first thing that we're seeing. The second thing is phishing. That leads to the ransom. Any kind of email or any other sophisticated phishing attacks. There's spear phishing and other types of phishing. Those would be my top two. I know there's several others, and I'll let George touch on the others.
Yeah, and I did want to bring this up as well. And according to the Data Breach Investigation Report from 2023, ransomware tactics are actually decreasing in government as a tactic, but they're still the highest. So if that gives you any indication of what we have to do and focus on that. And looking at that, government organizations, they're experiencing a 40% increase overall in cyber attacks. And if you look at that number, that equates to like 11.5 attacks per minute in 2023. I mean, that's pretty amazing when you think about it, the number of attacks that are happening. The third piece to this, though, and if we look at them from a ransomware, social engineering, and system intrusion, that's getting into the critical infrastructure and really becoming disruptive to the government. And that is some of the motives that we're seeing and that are being indicated in these reports. And there are some ways that they're helpful in preventing that. A focus on developing and implementing incident response plans are in place. And then really what we're talking about today is moving from reactive to predictive approach on these attacks. There is one scary trend that I do want to bring up regarding public sector, is that the percentage of attacks that are multiple actors, that's internal and external, is reaching 16%, which is climbed a little bit. So, that's a little bit concerning. There's some good news along those lines as well, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But investing in cybersecurity awareness trainings for employees and really touching that human element, and then collaborating between agencies and organizations to share information and best practices is really important in this environment.
So adding to that 40% increase that government organizations are already experiencing, you're seeing a tick in multiple actor involvement. In other words, there's an internal element as well as the external, and that may be a mistake made, somebody clicked on something, or it may be a malicious employee. Could be either,
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
All right. Well, those are incredible insights. Thanks for sharing those. Let's move on to what organizations will likely be facing going forward. Let's pivot on what we know now and talk a little bit about how future attacks will differ from what we're seeing today. George, let's start with you on this one, then we'll go to James.
Yeah, and I think we can expect the frequency and sophistication of the attacks to continue to increase. And one of the big things that's going to drive that is really artificial intelligence. They're going to improve the ability of cyber criminals to attack. They can use those from completing automated tasks to scanning for vulnerabilities to even generating phishing emails and making them more personalized and more difficult to detect from that perspective. And then it just kind of points to the importance of having a fully integrated network and security architecture to keep it simple, to keep it focused, and be able to sustain that. That's just going to be critical as these expand and become more sophisticated with the AI. And James, I'm talking about attackers, but tell us a little bit about defenders, I think.
I really want to point out something. AI is not just something that's being used in a negative sense, but also in a positive sense. And if I might just point out something with this slide, George, you did a really good job using AI to create these graphics. I just want to point out that many of our vendors are using security by putting AI, artificial intelligence, and ML, machine learning, on the offensive and being proactive about monitoring, threat hunting, even UEBA or user entity behavior analytics capabilities to detect heuristic or unknown events. So AI is being used with our IPS, next-gen anti-malware, our MDR solution, XDR solutions. All of those things are using AI, which is nothing more than using artificial intelligence to look at algorithms and create reports, create automated responses and detection and response. So those are already in place, and we're working on those constantly to develop more and in a positive way. So I would say artificial intelligence is certainly the way we're going forward.
The faster you can mill through all of those signals and provide context and actionable intelligence to the folks that are going to actually investigate, the better, right? And AI gets us there, certainly. All right, we have another poll question for our audience. This one is, how confident do you feel in your organization's current capabilities to fully recover services and operations in the event of a major cyber incident? So given all that James and George have talked about so far, are you highly confident? Again, well prepared, processes are tested, we've run some TTX, some tabletop exercises to make sure our incident response plans are stress tested. Are you somewhat confident? You have some ongoing planning and preparedness efforts underway or working through that maturity cycle? Are you not as confident and prepared as you think you should be, or you don't know, you're not sure? And again, James, George, while our audience responds, I'd like to get your perspective. In working with government organizations, are they generally well prepared and resilient as well as they think they should be?
You know, I think that we could all take more steps to be more prepared. I think that we all need to be looking at doing all we can constantly to change and to improve. If I might just take what we already have as a complex environment and make it very simple, I'll just give 3 examples. Number 1, what products are you using? What tools are you using to protect the multiple perimeters that you now have? And I know that there's complexity with network, with perimeters, and with products and interoperability, but think about simplicity and simplifying the products into one. I think that's one thing that I would recommend. The second thing is the processes. Are the processes you're using reliable? Are there vulnerabilities with third-party contractors or application APIs? So again, simplifying the processes and making sure they're reliable. And the third and last thing is always the human factor. Are the employees trained? Do they think before they click? And are they using strong passwords? And definitely multi-factor authentication should be used everywhere. So those are my top 3 to simplify.
Yeah, and from my perspective, working with government organizations, I think there's a clear understanding of how prepared and resilient their architecture is and where they should be. And, you know, referencing Forrester Consulting thought leadership, 76% of government IT leaders recognize how critical network is to the success of their digital transformation. 55% of those IT leaders understand that they need to move to an SD-WAN environment and an SD-WAN network architecture. The biggest question is, do they do it internally or do they do it with a third-party partner? So, you know, that's the part that we're working through now. Also, we spoke about the different types of attacks earlier, and, you know, just kind of thinking about it simply, it's you have to protect your users, protect your network, and protect your data. And I think that's kind of the information that James was sharing as well.
All right, well, let's look at what our audience feels in terms of poll results. It looks like more are not as confident and prepared as they think they should be. There's a little consternation there, right, around 45%, and then followed by somewhat confident, ongoing planning going on. You know, they're getting their act in order, but clearly there are gaps and they're aware of those and working on them. A handful confident and prepared, have tested their incident response plans, feel fairly good about it. I would dare say that most organizations, in my opinion, have not tested their response plans in terms of third-party dependencies. And with the global conflict that's going on, and the fact that many of the third-party suppliers are in foreign countries, right? Israeli companies, companies that are in Russia or based in Ukraine. Those foreign conflicts definitely create some supply chain issues. So if you haven't thought of that as one of your testing scenarios, that would be a piece of guidance that I might offer. But it looks like there's still some work to do in that area, and it looks like you gentlemen have hit it right on the nose, that there's some areas where it could be helpful with regard to automation. All right, let's jump into some questions between the two of you. And I'd like to hear from both of you on each one of these. All right, so the first question is, and I've been sort of thinking about this myself, why aren't traditional security approaches sufficient as organizations move to the cloud, automate their processes, adopt AI and machine learning, and start to extend digital services? George, let's start with you on this one, and then we'll go to James.
Sure. I think the issue is if you look at network and security independently, it's overwhelming and complicated. There's a lot of components, and traditionally they've been handled separately and independent of each other. And we're trying to pull those in, and the integration of network and security is vital. And what kind of leads us there? Some of the primary reasons is the rapid change in work environment. If you think about how our work environment changed with COVID and everyone becoming remote workers and having to connect, it extended that perimeter and made it very difficult from a network and security perspective to keep pace. And then with that change in the work environment, increase the internet traffic. And now you have like a migration to cloud services, you have increased internet traffic. Traditional solutions are just slow in secure access to the cloud if you think about like a centralized model. And if you go to a distributed model in security, then it becomes very difficult to manage and complicated to manage. So there's that component. And then with that, with all these changes, now you get like a fragmented environment where you have physical locations, you have cloud services, you have mobile users, and now you have to make sure that all of the security and connectivity is protected across all of those users. And like we talked about before, you add in the frequency and sophistication of attackers, and you expand your perimeters. That's really not a good equation. And along with that, the move to software in a subscriber-based model where updates are done regularly. If you think about how many updates you do on your phone with applications alone in a personal environment, they're constantly upgraded. It's important to have those software upgrades completed because that alleviates some of the vulnerabilities. So that's important. And then bringing it back to government, we talk about the regulatory environment. You need to know where all your data is all the time, regardless of whether it's in the cloud or on an on-prem server. So those are really the main reasons and the storyline behind why traditional approaches just aren't sufficient anymore.
Yeah, I was going to add that traditional security worked for traditional networks, but the perimeters have evolved, and they've evolved from data centers and offices to cloud, and remote workers are working from home. So more visibility, more control is necessary. And George, you so eloquently stated many facts there, so I won't repeat what you said, but you nailed it. It just
essentially, this new way of operating, both business and technical, requires new ways of thinking about security. It's as simple as that. As one has changed, the shift has to be right along with. All right, well, let's talk about SASE. What can organizations expect to accomplish with it? How can it address some of these key barriers to modernization, costs, IT skill gaps, legacy systems, the siloing of data, and so on? James, let's start with you this time.
Organizations, they can expect to improve on several things with SASE. There are a lot of aspects of SASE. Of course, when you look at the Gartner report, it has the main topics of SASE, but if you read further, there are a lot of other features that are included with SASE. But the first one is improving performance by optimizing the traffic flows. And I think a lot of times we're focused so much on the security that we forget about reducing the latency. And the way that you do that is by having a lot of POP sites closer to the customer, because now all of this is done in the cloud, which is one of the key points of SASE, is doing these things in the cloud. The other thing is improving the security with a single point of control. So a lot of companies are doing point solutions where they have different vendors for different aspects of security or for different aspects of the network. And when you have different point solutions, it doesn't make it any easier to control the security in a single point of control. And so that's another aspect of SASE that is defined by SASE and is important to remember. And then the other thing is cloud adoption. Migrating to the cloud, you got to speed up that. And the migration is tough. It's a complex migration, but SASE makes it so much easier with the management of a single portal. And that's really the key, is if you can do it all in a single portal, it controls all of the aspects of network and security together. But that's the key. A lot of SASE providers or SSE providers, again, are single point solutions. So what I want to emphasize is, I think the thing that's holding people back is that it's a hard migration process, but it really isn't. It's a rapid deployment, and that's what makes it so much easier. And I hate to jump ahead. I know that we have some questions ahead, but I want to point out that if you start with users and devices and applications, it all combines with the network, and you can do it all together with a rapid deployment. And we'll get into that in the roadmap section, so I won't jump into that. I'll let George answer the question as well.
Yeah, and James, you did a great job answering that question. It's mostly, you look at the modernization barriers of legacy systems. It reduces the complexity moving to SASE. Siloed data, you have visibility in network traffic and security events all in one portal. So you kind of combine those. IT resources, it takes the complexity out of management and puts it into a single portal. And then from a cost perspective, just the reduction in cost by consolidating the network and the security functions into a single platform. That's how we address those modernization barriers.
So admittedly, it sounds like it's complicated to transition, but you don't have to do it all at once, and the benefits are really tremendous across the boards. All right, so what are some of the advantages? What's the appeal of converging networks with SD-WAN and cybersecurity capabilities into this elegant, simple solution, single solution? What challenge does it help organizations overcome? What are some of the things that you might advise?
Yeah, I'll start with that, and I'm going to start with just the laundry list, and then I'm going to let James tell the how behind it. But just give the laundry list. It simplifies the management and security. It improves visibility and control. It enhances the performance on the network and the reliability of the network. It increases the ability to deploy this rapidly, and it reduces the total cost of ownership. The challenges it addresses are managing remote workers, the support of cloud-based applications, and even hybrid applications. It just simplifies and expands and provides advanced security features on all perimeters. So, James, that's the laundry list and the challenges that it addresses. How?
It's interesting, the appeal, I like that word. What is appealing about it is that it does converge network and security, but it doesn't just converge it, it converges it into a single portal. And I think that's what's really important. The other thing is the visibility and control is all application-based, and the routing of policies. SD-WAN is one thing, but when you combine that with the policies, with the security into that same single portal, it really makes it appealing. I like that word. The performance we touched on earlier and the reliability. So you have the reliability of SD-WAN and the circuits and the resiliency, but you also have the performance of a single pass or single policy architecture, and that reduces the latency. You hear about point solutions that sends the data over here for a sandbox and over there to be inspected, and then it's re-encrypted, and it's a single pass solution is really what enhances that performance. And so that's something that we definitely focused on and has a great appeal to our customers. And I love that you mentioned reduces cost. A lot of times we hear SASE is expensive, and it is. You get what you pay for. But when you think about when we do these analysis of what a customer is currently using, and when they migrate to SASE, how much money they'll be saving because they don't have multiple point solutions, there is actually a reduction in cost. And so the total cost of ownership decreases as the services are converged. And that's really what we're trying to help people with right now.
Yeah.
Simplicity and efficiency, both in time and resources, tools and solutions, it's really a survival tactic these days, in my humble opinion. So James, how can SASE improve constituent services? How does it support things like self-service and this modern omni-channel contact center operations model that we're faced with?
So I'll hit on a couple of these. It improves the performance of applications by leveraging multiple access connections, increasing resiliency across multiple applications. The latency sensitive apps like voice and video, it really focuses on, and it ensures a smoother, more effective interaction for constituents, and it boosts their satisfaction levels. That's really what it's about, is improving performance. The second thing I'm thinking of is better security. The enterprise level of security for users that allows access to applications and data over different connection types really gives a peace of mind that makes the security what it really is. It's better security. So it boosts trust and reputation within an organization. And last, I'll point out that we're all working from home or remotely, especially as we travel more. Support for remote work, it definitely has been on the rise since COVID, but the online services, how secure are they? And so we need to make sure that those are secure and reliable. SASE, it enables us to provide secure access to these applications from anywhere. It doesn't matter if we're in the office or working from home. It all goes through the same rule sets that we use. And so no matter where the service providers or the constituents are located, it's all supporting the remote work. And George,
like
I think you'll touch on the omni-channel. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Sounds like a dream. Seamless user experience, flexible, security, trusted services, all good, all in one packet.
Yeah.
George.
And regarding the omni-channel contact center operations, we've worked quite a bit with contact center solutions, and SASE itself doesn't directly provide any omni-channel functionality, but you got to think of a lot of the contact centers are moving into a cloud-based solution, and now you have a cloud-based network that's highly reliable. And you have that security posture as well to support it. So the end user experience, just from a resiliency and high performance network perspective on those contact centers, is just improved.
So George, let's dive into that a little bit more. What helps ensure visibility and control in that modern SASE SD-WAN environment?
Yeah, so SD-WAN, it's reliable because it's application-based routing across the network. So there's visibility and control based on an application level. And you can, from that perspective, you can take multiple underlays and access connectivity and utilize those for that overlay traffic. So it's more resilient, I guess, is where I'm trying to go with that. It's a little more resilient from a network perspective. You have more visibility and control based on an application level. So your operational network efficiencies kind of drive that. And then your centralized security policies, like James had talked about earlier, are critical, being able to manage all security policies out of a single portal for visibility from that perspective. And James, I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, it's easier in today's environment. End users, they connect to the network from outside a controlled environment, but it increases the network complexity. So we really have to ensure that the visibility and control is there. And the SASE architecture provides both the connections to the network and also the security to the network. And so with a remote force and cloud apps in a single portal, that's really what SASE is all about, is bringing all of those things together: visibility, control, users, and applications.
Visibility, enterprise visibility, is certainly something that's hard, right? And I think every organization struggles with it. It's the holy grail for cybersecurity professionals, to be sure. So, George, what actionable steps and practices and approaches do you recommend for organizations as they start to modernize with cyber in mind? Where should they start? What else needs to be thought about? What needs to be in place? And are there cultural changes that need to occur? How can they ensure that what they do now, their solution and their strategy, is sustainable over time?
Sure. Yeah, the first thing is that human element, and it starts understanding where you are from that perspective. So a cybersecurity assessment's a good place to start. And from there, it's building that culture of cybersecurity. So educating employees, it's not just an IT issue. It needs to be handled by all employees, knowing not to click on that link that was sent to them. And, that educational process and reinforcement is critical. Implementing strong passwords and MFA, that's important. And keeping those software updates up to date is critical as well to reduce the vulnerability. Oh, I'm sorry. We do have some points here, and from a network and security perspective, it's really looking to begin that road to SASE and combining those two elements, the network and the security. So, James, do you have some recommendations on starting
I
points?
love this slide, and I want to just take a minute to look at this and look at where you're at on this roadmap. People are at different points, but I want to just point out that everyone has had a VPN at some point, especially with the working from home during COVID. So I think everybody has that taken care of, but is that VPN a zero trust environment? And that's really what it's about, is securing all the perimeters and trusting nobody, and not just no user, but also don't just allow them in. And once they're in, they see the entire network. Only allow them to this particular applications they need access to. And that's what zero trust network access is all about. It's not just a VPN, it's a access to specific users to applications. And that's the difference between VPN and ZTNA. Then, we get into SD-WAN. Just about everybody has had SD-WAN. It's been around for almost 10 years now. And that is really all about network and resiliency and reducing costs with different access control methods. But then we tack on SSE over the top. And that's really what I want to jump into is, you may have these things today, but are they separated? And when you start to bring them together, SSE provides a very easy way to migrate to a full SASE solution. And again, that full SASE solution is a one single portal experience where all the policies are there for network and security. So you can start by putting SSE over the top of an SD-WAN and then moving to a full SASE solution later. And then once you get to that, there's so much more that is beyond SASE. We get into, and I'll just name off some of these things with, SASE comes with SD-WAN, secure web gateway, cloud access security broker, zero trust network access, next generation firewalls or firewalls as a service. With cloud access security broker comes DLP, and you start getting into those more specific features like RBI Is that required? EPP and EDR, are those things required? Are you going to need the visibility of XDR and MDR? And so you get into what's beyond SASE. So I love this roadmap of where people are at and how they can get to the next step.
I do too. This is a particularly wonderful illustration of the fact that you can start wherever you are in the journey and then progressively move in a phased-in approach toward your end objective. Right? It's not rip and replace, as you said, but rather a wrap and refresh objective that you're undertaking over time and at the pace, perhaps, that the organization is able to afford. So, James, given what we see as the slow uptake of SASE among state and local government, what else can state and local government leaders do, or what else do they need to know more specifically? What misconceptions can we clear up?
You know, it's not a all or nothing proposal. The reality is SASE can be adopted gradually and allowing for that transition at a pace that suits their needs. I should have mentioned that, we got to make sure that a budget is an ongoing thing for cybersecurity expenses, software updates, and employee training. That's something that we all always need to be assured of, is to have a budget for security and SASE. The other thing is SASE and cybersecurity there's a misconception that it's merely a network solution or that it's a cybersecurity solution, but in all actuality, they work together. And I think that's that all-in-one network and security solution that's really important. George, what do you think?
Yeah, from that perspective also, SASE's kind of to reiterate what you were saying, the scalability and flexibility of it is important to keep in mind in the rapid deployment of services into a remote worker environment. That's critical in the cost effectiveness of bringing this into a single platform.
So, George, do you have any real life use cases or state and local government success stories that you can share with our audience? I know, having been on the other end of this discussion as a listener, it's always good to be able to find yourself in the stories of success that you've helped others achieve.
Yeah, and our biggest, our biggest area of success and starting point for this journey has really been the SD-WAN networking. To launch into a SASE environment. So if you look at the architecture that we had, we've deployed private networking pretty successfully across agencies, and being able to move that from that private network into an SD-WAN base, and then keeping the private connectivity by putting our gateways at the edge of our core private network has been kind of a natural progression. So it's very easy for us to take a private connection somewhere and move it into an SD-WAN environment and give that application control, the visibility, the resilience to that end user. So we've had success kind of onboarding into this environment and into this journey from that perspective. The other piece is the remote users, the ZTNA, being able to deploy that from a security perspective in, given the work environment changes that we've had great success in moving remote users into a ZTNA environment and kind of keeping that software-defined perimeter as well as the software-defined wide area network. So those have been kind of ways that we've been able to make an impact so far. We've also, interestingly, as we have this conversation, there's other components and priorities that are associated with organizations. And what we're finding is that the wide area network leads to discussions about the local area network and a secure Wi-Fi, for example, building that in a LAN infrastructure, or bringing in the collaboration tools or voice services and video services. The way we've architected this, it's made it possible to do that on an SD-WAN perspective. So we're able to kind of help with other areas as well, not just the security and network integration, but an overall integration of services. So, it kind of expands the portfolio if you look at it on where we can impact things positively for organizations.
The prioritized remote user deployment, that can really have a great impact. James, did you have something else you wanted to add?
I had two customers I thought about. We have over 100 case studies published on our website, but I just wanted to touch on two that came to mind. We had one that as we went through the installation process and started implementing SASE on a customer's network, they realized that they had malware. And this goes back to a fact that someone pointed out, that a lot of people have malware for 6 months and don't even know it. It's just waiting on their network, and the bad actors are looking for east-west traffic or to get into another network or a bigger network with more money for ransomware. So malware is across the network, and they immediately said, oh no, we have a problem. Of course, the new SASE environment stopped it, but they needed a way to clean it up and not take it home or bring it into work. And so they immediately installed the SDP clients, or the software defined perimeter clients, or ZTNA, across their network. And so that can be done within minutes. And so that was much quicker than trying to get a device out on site to do SD-WAN and all the security policies. That could take a day or two to get it shipped out there. So instead of it spreading across their network, as they did these installs across hundreds of locations, they quickly put out ZTNA clients across thousands of their users. And so that was one use case. Another use case was just basic resiliency and increased bandwidth. Found at one of our college that we facilitated a bandwidth increase for their students. They loved it because obviously the SD-WAN portion of this improved the resiliency, which means they were happy, the network wasn't going down, but also it increased the bandwidth because now you can give priority to the most important applications as opposed to just surfing the web or streaming content. So those are the two that I thought of.
Those are
James,
great.
the first one that you had was, it's amazing that when you get that visibility into the network, what you can find, and that's a great testimony for that.
Again, increased visibility, right? It's just part of what you need to be able to battle back against today's threats and to be able to manage the assets in a way that's risk-based. Perhaps we can get that link to that treasure trove of over 100 case studies available on your website, and we can share it out after the fact when we send out the recorded version, if that's possible.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, great. All right, let's move to take a couple of audience questions, shall we? All right, our first one is: there is no denial of cybersecurity attack in agencies' network vulnerabilities. As the surface attack has increased due to the work from home, applications, data moving to the cloud, what are the options for agencies to secure their information and data? If SASE's the answer, is all SASE created equal? Almost all the network security providers are offering SASE services. That is a great question. Who wants to take that one up?
James, you or me?
I would absolutely love to. Yeah, I just didn't want to step on your toes. I deal with this every day. We have comparisons with 17 different SASE vendors from over a year ago. That's been narrowed down to the top 7. So we deal with comparisons with Cisco, Palo Alto. Might say Cisco, it's Cisco Meraki specifically. We get into Umbrella. But Palo Alto has multiple points. We get into Zscaler, Fortinet, VMware, and of course, Cato Networks is another. So all of those we look at and we compare what is the needs of the customer. Do they need on-premises equipment, or do they need something in the cloud? Do they have other specific needs? Really what it points to is we do have one that we prefer over the others based on the requirements. The majority of requirements being that it's migrating to the cloud, or all of the security services combined in one, or a single portal solution. So it really depends on what the customers are looking for in the way of all the different SASE components that were up on that roadmap, and the extra features with DLP, CASB, EPP, XDR, MDR. If you need all those things, it points you one way. If you need something else, it points you another way. But the good thing is that Windstream, we help the customer manage this, whether it be managing the network, managing the security, managing the access layer, the voice. We bring all of this into one not just a single portal for SASE, but a single portal for all of those components, the voice, the LAN services, and we have an award-winning portal solution. So hate to be a plug for Windstream, but that is where we do take our pride and joy, and we work very hard on making our services helpful to our customers, and we listen to them. So that's how I would answer it.
Sounds like you've done all the legwork.
I would love to share. I look forward to, if they want to talk some more, we can go into more details about each of the vendors. I would love that.
All right, excellent, excellent. So next question, does SASE replace SD-WAN?
No.
No. The simple answer, short answer is no.
Can we go a little bit deeper on why you feel that?
Sure. SD-WAN is vital. It's a portion of SASE. It's critical because of the application visibility and control, the performance that you get from the networking component on this. Those are all parts of SASE. Remember, SASE is not a product, it's a framework. And that's important to keep in mind. So SD-WAN is a very important piece to that framework. So I guess that's the longer version of the answer.
All right, so this one's, I think this one steps back into migration to the cloud, right? So this person wants to know what the number one reason you feel organizations are migrating to the cloud is.
Cost. Yeah,
Cost.
it usually comes down to cost. I know our company is doing the same thing. We've migrated a lot of our data centers to the cloud, and that has reduced our costs. But does it open up other vulnerabilities? Sure. So as you migrate to the cloud, again, it goes back to what we talked about. There needs to be a budget for security as perimeters change. And so you reduce the cost of data centers, but at the same time, you increase the cost of cloud access security broker or DLP. But those should be in place regardless of if you're at a data center or if you've migrated to the cloud yet or not. So usually it comes down to cost savings.
And this next question comes right on the heels of that, I think, and it's nicely paired. So how would I choose between cloud-based and on-premises-based solutions? I think it gets at what are some of the criteria or questions that leaders should consider in weighing those two.
Yeah, and it's really weighing when you look at it, it's the review of your cost structure. So that's one portion of that. The performance requirements, compliance requirements, and control requirements are also important. So you have to look at what that infrastructure is going to cost to be able to put that out there, and then what you're going to gain by doing that in a premise-based solution versus moving into a cloud environment. And the important part to remember from that is whether you do this on a premise basis or a cloud basis, there is still a play for SASE and an importance in SASE in that environment with connectivity back to that primary data center, with securing the perimeter with remote users and how they access the data that you have there. All of those things kind of play into that as well. So regardless of whether it's a cloud-based deployment, premise-based deployment, from an application standpoint, SASE is still kind of the play to go on that.
Okay, let's take one. I think we have enough time for one, maybe two more. How difficult is the implementation of SASE? And on the heels of that, I'd be interested in you also adding, what does a successful SASE deployment look like?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, we've done quite a few. I mean, they're all different and unique in their own special way, but I think the easiest thing is most people already have SD-WAN, so start with SSE over the top, add in the ZTNA clients as needed, or if you would like to go full SASE, then that would be a rip and replace. But a lot of times people are just doing a simple, let's take a look at it, see what we're finding, and then grow from there. And just as we pointed out in the use case, with the visibility, you start to realize how much you need it. And then you can start putting the budget toward growing from there.
George, anything to add on that? A successful SASE deployment? And I got to tell you, James, I think you should have T-shirts printed up. Go full SASE.
Yeah,
I think they're just
like it.
That is. Now we're going to have to see James with T-shirts that say "Go full SASE" on calls. So that's that's going to be fun. Yeah. No, the only thing that I can add from that perspective to what James was saying is understanding like the technology. So really partnering with someone or a provider to understand your environment, who understands what your critical business needs are and where you want to take this is vital because there are so many different ways that you can enter into this journey. And the way that you do that is unique. And you need to partner with someone who understands that, who can address that, and has the solutions that can drive those business outcomes that you're looking for. So, when I talk to my team, most of the time we're talking about the overall scope of work and how it impacts the entire environment and not just a component of that. It's the same thing when you're looking at getting into this. That deployment has to be roadmapped out so it makes sense in the environment. The implementation can be very simple.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm sorry, I just wanted to mention something I left out, but you mentioned that the implementation piece, that is what our services are doing. We have a concierge service, and we failed to mention that on all of these slides, but that's the differentiator that Windstream brings, is that we have a CSOC that actually does the implementations and does it very well. And there's been a lot of feedback from our customers, how pleased they are with that. And to take it a step further, we actually have TSMs, or technical support managers, that are proactive and that go out and look for these things, and will actually call the customer and say, hey, we noticed something. We want to implement a new rule. What do you think? And work with the customers. Those are things that we really, really emphasize. But we also have customers that are huge and they want to do it all themselves. And we offer that as well. You have full access to make all the changes and controls, but we're here to help.
Whatever fits your protocol. Yeah. All right. I'd like to ask each of you to just take a minute or two to sum up your final thoughts, any key takeaways, golden nuggets you want to share with our audience as we part, and maybe even perhaps what you see on the horizon. We'll start with you, George, and we'll let James have the last word.
Okay. I would say continue to expand your knowledge, understand what programs you have within the state and what that framework looks like, and then utilize your partners and the tools that you have and your providers, and leverage us. Ask questions and understand where that entry point is and what the next steps are of advancement, and then work very closely. This does not have to be a complicated thing. We do this on a regular basis, and it can be very simple and beneficial. It is where we need to go, integrating the network and security platforms together for the future. So yeah, I think that's kind of the final statement that I have is, expand your knowledge, see it work, experience it in your environment, and have a program in mind with projects that get you to that end result.
James?
I would just say, as a call to action, go to our website and ask for a demo. It's very impressive, and I think that that'll get things started, and it'll help you so that you're not afraid of the integration. Don't be afraid of the complexity. It really is simple, but we agree it can be complex. Our questionnaires that we go through to make sure that all the migrations are done smoothly is a very detailed and complex questionnaire, but we're here to simplify it. So don't be afraid of the integration. We're here to help. And as a call to action, go out, ask for a demo. We'd be more than happy to show you and walk you through how easy it is.
Excellent. That's more than a fair offer, and making it easier on the customer is always the right way to go. I want to be respectful of our time commitment, so we're going to wrap it up here. In closing, I'd just like to thank you both, George and James, for sharing your insights on today's webcast. It's been delightful. I'd also like to thank Windstream Enterprise for making it possible to have this important discussion today. And of course, thanks to you, our audience, for spending your time with us. To access a certificate of attendance, you can just click on the certificate widget in the console. We look forward to seeing you soon at another government technology event. For Government Technology, I'm Deb Snyder. Stay safe and have a great rest of your day. James, George, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.